Wait. Before we start, just want to make sure we're clear here. While this podcast talks about sobriety, mental health, and addiction, it is not meant to replace professional medical advice. Welcome to Sisters in Sobriety.
I'm Kathleen.
And I'm Sonia.
And we're ex-sisters-in-law, brought together in marriage and bonded through our sobriety journey.
Join us as we talk sobriety, addiction, and everything in between. You're in for quite a ride. And our Substack is buzzing with amazing content, from creative mocktail recipes to insightful courses and reflective exercises. There is something for everyone. Don't miss out. It's a great way to add some extra joy and depth to your journey. Check it out. Welcome to Sisters in Sobriety. Today, we are thrilled to have Ali Shapiro on the podcast. Ali is a health coach, a speaker, and creator of the Truce with Food program. She brings a fresh perspective to understanding our relationship with food, body image, and overall health.
Ali's approach is rooted in functional medicine and cognitive behavioral change, helping individuals break free from emotional eating, cravings, binging, and the struggles tied to body image. As the host of the popular podcast Insatiable, Ali dives deep into the emotional and behavioral drivers behind food and health struggles, offering empowering insights for creating lasting change.
Her work focuses on unearthing deeper stories we tell ourselves about food and our bodies, leading to true freedom. We are beyond excited to dig into these important topics with you today, Ali. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. I love talking about this, and our free show. I love talking with you both. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be fun. I'm so happy to have you here, really. We were also talking about this because I feel like this is one area, even though I've been sober for a while, this one area in my life that I just have not been able to work through.
Yeah, and Kathleen, I hear that a lot. I work a lot with sober people who are sober from alcohol, and they come to me and they're like, "This is the one piece," and they come at it from different angles. Some people, food and body image were their original issue, and then alcohol supplanted it. Mm-hmm. Or some people, they saved their calories for alcohol, so they were able to be.
I did that.
Yeah, thinner. And then once they stopped drinking, they turned to sugar. And so it goes both ways. But no matter where people are and when food became a thing, it all goes back to the same place. So we can talk about that today.
Exciting.
Yeah, I was on a podcast Saturday on, remember Charlie, the Way Out podcast? And
Yes.
Yeah. So we were talking about how we both did that, right? So we wouldn't eat and we would save our calories for alcohol. And the combination was you get more messed up because you're not eating. Mm-hmm. And the outward appearance is not like, oh, I have like a beer belly or whatever. And so we were thinking about back, like, can you imagine? Like, I was doing this in my 20s and 30s, how unhealthy that was. But imagine if I was still doing that now.
Mm-hmm. I know, because
I can't imagine.
Yeah, and I think one of the problems with the way that we've all been cultured about food and health is the intertwine of like health and thinness. Oh. And so people think, well, if I'm thin, I'm healthy.
Yeah.
But we actually know the medical term. I mean, it's not highly technical, but they're called TOFIs, thin on the outside, but they tend to be fat on the inside. Yes. They think they don't have to care. And their mortality rate, I think it's like twice the rate as you age, because what happens is as you age, you become more, it's called insulin resistant. What basically means is it's harder to get food into your cells, which more gets stored as fat. So we see higher incidences of fatty liver or inflammation, and it creates this kind of like spiral effect. It gets exponential in terms of health effects. But people who are thin don't think they quote unquote have to care because they're not showing it on their weight. So everyone, regardless of their body size, especially as we age, needs to pay attention, but not in the way that we've been told to pay attention. So it's kind of a matrix.
Yes. Ali, so can you explain to us, what does it mean to unearth our food and body story and how this kind of shapes our relationship with food?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest way to think about this is, first of all, most of us have been cultured, right? Who are, I would say, under 20 years old to think that food is only about weight, which is about health. And the narrative is it's about willpower and discipline, right? So it's like to eat well. And nowadays that functional medicine has become more popular, we've also layered this morality layer onto it. Like, oh, if you're struggling with something, it's because you're not using food as medicine and blah, 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 right? So we have these two parallel narratives. But what I found in my research, in my own story as well, was I had a ton of willpower. I had a ton of discipline. And maybe like you, Kathleen, it was like the one thing in my life that I couldn't figure out. Like both of you, I know both of your clients tend to be really high achieving and high functioning. And that's exactly how I was. And I'm like, this willpower discipline narrative just doesn't make sense. And part of why I went back to grad school was I realized that functional medicine looked at so I had struggled with like IBS and depression, which was a result of the chemotherapy that I had 10 years earlier. Was my gut health, but no one knew what any of this was 20 years ago. And I was like, oh, for me personally, my IBS, my depression, and my acne were actually symptoms. They weren't diagnoses. And I had to get to the root causes. And so I was able to use functional medicine to heal and feel amazing and reverse those conditions, but then I couldn't keep it up. And I thought, wait a second, what if this story about willpower and discipline isn't true? The same way that for me, my IBS and depression, everyone's diagnoses are different. So I don't want to say this is a blanket, you know, I just want to clarify that because the wellness world can be a whole lot of crazy these days. So.
Yeah.
But I thought, what if falling off track was a symptom too? What if that wasn't actually the issue? What if willpower and discipline wasn't the issue? And what I found was the deeper narrative is that food is about safety and specifically belonging. And belonging can be kind of an academic term, but I think of it as practically like, are all parts of you welcome? Do you feel like you matter? And when I really started researching into this and looking at it, I was like, I feel like I belong. I feel like I'm confident, except about my weight. And what I started to realize was, oh, I was confident in the areas that came easy to me. Like I was really good at work because I was good at school. And part of why I leaned into school was because I struggled with my weight as a kid. And so I was like, I'm not going to be the pretty one. I'm not going to be the one chosen by boys. So I'm going to be smart and overachieve and work hard because that got me things. But the things that were really vulnerable for me, which at the time was figuring out my health, figuring out my weight. I had all those diagnoses. I was in a corporate job and it wasn't super fulfilling. There's something about having a near-death experience at 13 that sends you into an existential tailspin very early on. And so I wanted something with more meaning, but I was like, well, once I lose weight, I'll be able to figure this out. And then I wanted to date. And at the time I had been in a corporate job where I was living abroad. I was traveling all the time. And I was like, well, once I lose weight, then I'll meet someone that I want to date. So these very vulnerable areas, my health, my career, and dating, I had kind of used the once I lose weight. That was the way to kick the vulnerability down the can, or down the can. So when I thought of like, oh, I don't feel if I think about belonging, I can't bring these parts of me that don't have the answers, that are beginners, and that I wasn't able to be with that. And so that was ultimately why I would fall off track. On the surface, it was like, oh, I'm so stressed from my job. But I was like bored and like detached from it, but like also stressed. And then I would eat at night, right? Like I deserve to eat this. Or going out on a date and it like didn't go well. It's like, oh, it's because of my weight. And then eating, right? But underneath it was these deeper issues, belonging issues. And so I think we can kind of make it more practical, even if Kathleen, can I ask you some questions?
Yes, please.
Because did that make sense? Because sometimes this stuff can be abstract.
It's too abstract for me.
Is okay. Do you want to, Sonia, do you want to dig
ask
down?
some questions?
No. I think if you go through this with Kathleen, I'll understand what the belonging piece is. Because I know I struggle with the belonging thing that's coming up a lot for me in therapy. So I would love to hear this.
Yeah. Okay, so Kathleen, let me first just ask you, what are some of your happiest food memories?
Okay, so I don't have very many happy food memories, I have to say, because my like disordered eating started when I was 8. So long, long time ago. Happy food memories, I would say, if I think about it, it's when I'm cooking, and I actually really love eating healthy food, though I don't eat healthy food all the time because I binge now on sugar. But I actually love Thanksgiving. So Canada, our Thanksgiving just passed yesterday, and it's my favorite holiday. And I love making Thanksgiving dinner. So I love that. I love that. Like family is around. I like cooking healthy food. But those, I don't have very many other happy memories of food.
Even at like 5, 6, 7, 4.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. It goes way, way back because I was an overweight child, and don't want to blame my parents for this, but I was raised by people in a generation who thin, was that you're supposed to be thin. So I don't have. I have some like a little bit of. I actually do have some happy memories of eating. My grandmother is French Canadian, and she would make this like fudge. And so we would have that together when I was little. So I have that memory, but otherwise, really, I don't have a lot of great memories around food.
Yeah. Well, I think that's even fascinating. I bet, what was your relationship with your grandmother like?
Really good. Yeah, really good.
Yeah. So the belonging, you felt like you could rest in her care.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So now tell me about some of your hard food memories.
I remember my first binge when I was 8 years old, and I had to walk myself home from school, and I would call the like backyard neighbor to let them know that I was home safe. And this was a different time again, right? I'm 46, so it was a different time. And I was an only child, and I remember this feeling of loneliness, this like deep, deep feeling of loneliness. And I made an entire pot of pasta, and I like just shoveled it in plain, no. And it was like, it really helped me feel not lonely in that moment. It like helped fill me up.
So what was the loneliness? Do you know what it was stemming from?
Yeah, I mean, I love that we're doing a live therapy session, it feels like right now. But yeah, I was a lonely kid. I was really, really lonely in childhood. And my parents did the best that they could possibly do, but I was an only child. I was awkward back then. I was not pretty back then. I was, overweight-ish, chubby, like not super overweight, but kind of chubby. I didn't have a lot of friends. And so if someone asked me to describe your childhood, yes, there were absolute happy moments, but my overwhelming feeling of my childhood was loneliness.
Yeah. Yeah. So can you see the lack of belonging there?
Yes. Can you, Sonia?
Yeah, I now I get it. Yeah,
And-
now I get it.
And I think why it's, and Kathleen, I struggled with weight early on. I went to Weight Watchers at 11. Yeah. And people were like, your parents let you go? And I was like, my parents let me do whatever I suggested. This was not, so it wasn't like to blame my parents or anything, but it was just like, I'm 46 too. It was a different era. Like,
It was a different era. I know. It was a different era. Like, yeah.
Yeah. And I think there were a lot of great parts about that era, but there was a lot that was not. And this emotional piece. And so I think, so what happens in that pasta, right, is not only does it fill you up, but it stimulates attachment chemicals. So since the time that we are born, food, we had 2 safety needs as babies and early children, to be touched and to be fed. But the food was accompanied by a caretaker, right? From the time we're born, food and caregiving are attached because as babies, we have 2 basic needs to survive: touch and food. And Dr. Deborah McNamara, who's actually an amazing Canadian developmental psychologist, talks about this in her book, Nourished. But when we are being fed, we're being fed by a caretaker. There's someone that we belong to that cares enough about us that we survive, right? So when we eat that pasta, Kathleen, at 8, we're getting the attachment chemicals that are necessary to know that someone cares about us.
Right.
But it doesn't it doesn't give us the deeper belonging that there's no caretaker there, right?
Right.
And belonging requires a bigger risk, right? It requires being like, and again, not that we're supposed to know this at 8. I mean, I came home and started eating bagels after being bullied, right? And I had so much shame about being bullied. My parents probably would have supported me, but again, it was the 80s. No one did emotions. It was
No.
So it was like the bagels were my lifeline to feeling like I belong. I was stimulating the feeling of belonging without having to be like, why do all the girls hate me? And I'm sitting at a table by myself, right? And so for you, this just pervasive feeling of awkwardness, of picking up on the climate of I'm heavier, so that's bad, right? It starts to very early on make us feel like I gotta hide certain parts of me, my appetite included. My appetite's the obvious thing, but it's the vulnerabilities of I feel awkward, and when we're kids, like that developmental piece, our peers start to become really important to us because we're starting to try to individuate from our parents. So does that sort of help Sonia and Kathleen? Kathleen, I think, does that make it more clear of what I mean by belonging?
Yes, I didn't
It
know
does
there
for
were
me.
attachment like chemicals released. Like that's crazy.
So I'm curious if we take my example and then, because it kind of flows into the question I wanted to ask too, is like, yes, we were children of the 80s, and there's still, we were children of the Kate Moss era, of the like heroin chic and thin. And so it still happens, obviously. Like there's media image all over the news. Like you see thin is better still. You see that message. So when you have that lack of belonging, let's say, and then you're eating, in my case, it was that first started that I have that memory of that big bowl of pasta or pot, actually. How does then the media messaging, the beliefs that we have from society, how does that then impact us?
Ooh, I love this question. So as we're developing, I think what we need to think about is the first few decades of our life, belonging depends on other people liking us. Because like, when could you actually take care of yourself? Like, like it wasn't for me until I graduated undergrad, until I had a job, right? So until then, and nature designs this way. Like often it's thought like you can't care about what other people think, but no, we're in community with other people. It's good to learn in a healthy culture. It's good to learn. So what other people think and care about. We obviously don't live in a healthy culture. So there's a kink in the design of nature. So the media messages, what I love that you bring this up is like, and even like both of us, our parents were doing the best they could, right?
Yes.
The media, I think, is such a flashpoint for what the culture values and believes. And so as we're developing those first 20 years of our lives, the media messages get filtered into the doctor's messaging, into our parents' messaging. And again, we have to remember back in the 80s and 90s, there were we didn't have cable. We couldn't afford cable. There was like 3 stations, right? So there wasn't I don't even know if there is diversity of thought now. We have more noise, but so what ends up happening is we start to develop this internal sense of authority. This is good, this is bad, based on media messages. But again, these media messages, it's almost like surround sound at the doctor's office, right? I mean, doctors are still needing to learn that thinness isn't the only marker of health, right? And so what ends up happening is the media messages are just one fraction of it, honestly. But what they do is we're paying attention. Oh, this is what gets rewarded. This is what gets witnessed, and this is who matters, right? And ultimately, belonging is, I feel like I matter here, and I can contribute. And women especially are told you value and can contribute based on your looks and being an object versus having hungers, right? Physical, emotional, spiritual soul. I know I'm going deep, but that's just how I roll. But what happens internally to us as humans is the first couple years, we come out of early adulthood and we feel like there's this good or bad, right? A lot of my clients are like, I'm all or nothing, right? So it's like to be good, the message I got, and this feels authoritative, meaning like absolute. No, I can only find someone that I want to date if I lose 30 pounds.
Are you looking to reset your relationship with alcohol? Look no further than our self-paced 7-day reset program. In just 1 week, you'll gain the tools and support you need to kickstart your journey to a healthier, more balanced lifestyle. Our program includes daily audio, helpful exercises, and guided reflections. And best of all, it's on your time. Head over to sistersinsobriety.substack.com and let's take that first step together towards a better you.
No, I can only get this job if I lose weight. No, I can only go to the gym anytime I want and not be fearful that anyone's going to make fun of me once I'm a certain weight, right? And that feels so absolute, and that like there's no other options. But the job of adulthood is to evolve our sense of belonging, to go rather from what does everyone else think to how does this feel for me? How does this feel in my body? Not only what foods I was told were good or bad, but society might have told me that I only matter because of my weight, but do I want to believe that? Do I want to choose that? Do I want to evolve my ideas of good and bad to what feels good and bad? And I'll give you a practical example. When I met my now husband, I met him at a bar, again, different phase. I was never really a drinker, but when I met him, I was like 30 pounds above my ideal weight, right? And I was like, oh my God, but I can't date anyone. And then when he approached me in a bar and asked me out, I was no longer like, oh my God, like my body, whatever. I was like, do I want to learn how to practice dating? Because no matter how much weight you lose, dating is still awkward. And being in a relationship is a skill set of communication, of all these different things that weight loss can't teach you. And so I was like, I'm going to go out with him for me so that I can start practicing dating. Now it ended up, he's now my husband, but I, as an adult, had to say like, I am rejecting that I have to wait to date until I lose 30 pounds. Right? It's like if you're at the doctors and they are treating you under weight stigma. It's like, no, I deserve better care. Either you're going to give me better care or I'm going to go where I can get better care. So the task of belonging in adulthood is to actually question those messages and realize that maybe the environment that we grew up in and we didn't have other choices, there's a lot of other choices out here as adults, but we have to be willing to go out there and find them. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. I sort of, so we're way off script now. I hope that's okay, Sonia.
I love it. I'm like not even worried at all.
Okay. I'm like, okay, I have so many questions. So the belonging piece, is it tied then to self-worth? Like, is that the link? Is there a link there? Because what you're saying is like the belonging when we're younger is like outward, like how can I fit in with you? And then it sounds like you're saying the belonging later is how am I okay with how I am?
Yes. And it's finding the people that want to support that, right?
Okay.
I can even tell you in my own work, right? I really felt like an outsider talking about this belonging work for so long because everyone was like, no, food is medicine, it's willpower. People still think that.
Yeah.
But we need other people. So this isn't about everybody else, right? It's about finding your people. But over the years, I've found my people who want to go deep and have tried everything else. And so I feel belonging with my clients because they get it. Once we work together, I mean, they get it listening to podcasts like this, but they're like, yes. And so it's like, oh, as a kid, I needed everyone in my small community to like me. But now there's a big bad world out there, and it's about me finding, I don't need everyone, but I need some people. And I love that you brought up worth, because I think with weight and food. If we, Kathleen, I grew up, my dad every day was like, I'm running from the fat man. He was heavy as a child. He never put that on me, but like he would weigh himself every day. He would tell us his weight, right? So we grow up in this climate that that food is work, and that we have to earn our worth as a result. And so part of this is being like, oh, and this takes time, but it's like, food doesn't have to be work. My worth doesn't have to be work. And it's also a little bit more nuanced in that this is also a developmental skill. So not everyone is going to learn this. In fact, 60% of college-educated Americans will stay in what's called the socialized mind, where it's like, I care about what other people think. And this is not about how smart you are. The percentage is actually higher among entrepreneurs. It's like, are you willing to learn how to learn? So part of this is also being able to be curious and questioning if what you thought were good and bad were actually good and bad. So it's not all about worth, but it's willing to start to being like, I gotta figure out what works for me. Not only, with a lot of my clients, I was told I should be paleo or vegetarian. And so then and it starts with me giving them experiments to start to listen to their body. So that sense of authority comes from within, and being like, oh, I don't have to be anything. I can just, like, I need to know how to balance my blood sugar and gut health, but people are making this way too complicated, right? And I teach like a flex. So that's like the first, like, whoa, I don't need someone else to tell me how to eat. Like, I can listen to my body. And then it becomes, once they get into this belonging work and we look at the stories of, a story that might make us feel unsafe, that we don't belong, is I have to work for my worth, And so then we would practice, having you not work for your worth based on what's important to you in situations. Do you want to find the people who can really see you? Because I have a feeling if you felt this sense of loneliness from 8 years old and can't even articulate it, there's parts of yourself that are in deep hiding.
Ooh, good thing I have my therapy session right after the recording of this podcast. I'm just going to make note of that. Parts of myself are in hiding. Okay, but I have more questions. So many questions. Yeah. So I also, like, I think intuitively have known recently, and like in the last couple of years, that I need to shift and find my people. Like, I can't be surrounded by people who are dieting. I guess I'm going to say it plainly. It triggers me to no end. I like spiral from that. And so I am slowly but surely trying to create community around myself where it doesn't matter what size I am. I am finally in a relationship where my partner's like, I love you no matter what. He's never commented on my weight, even though I've gained 40 pounds since I met him. Never, not once. So I think that's part of the belonging also, is having that community that understands you, right? Like having that community.
I'll just say, I would say you're healing in the fact that you found a partner who doesn't care about that. Because often the stories that we have that are unconscious, and they're not unconscious because they're deep, it's just because we're always taking shortcuts of like, okay, am I safe or not? We have an anxiety management system that's always just scanning for, am I safe or not? And if you grew up, especially in a family that was like, your weight matters, you would probably, it's because it's familiar, not because it's what you want. Yeah. It would be like, let me find someone where I have to like watch my weight, work at my weight. So the fact that you have found someone, you're saying like, you're doing the work without consciously doing it, but it's saying like, wait a second, I don't want this to occupy my time. I don't want this to be central focus. And now you found safety in someone. So that's an example of growing up and saying, maybe when I was little, everyone around me cared. But in this great big wide world, there's a lot of people with different perspectives. And so I have more choices now. So I just want to point that out in case some of this stuff can be abstract.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I married Sonia's brother, who was very much raised in a family that places and still does a lot of emphasis around weight. And he was the same with me, like placing emphasis on weight. So you're right. I have grown then, because I have found a partner. He literally, like my partner says, nothing.
Oh my God, my brother had an issue, right? With
Yeah, when
you were pregnant
when we
and,
split, when I was pregnant, he had an issue with how big I was, and then when we split up, I lost 30 pounds, and he was like, "Why couldn't you do that when we were married?" So like, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very clear where my issues come from, right? I know my parents are like, it's like a textbook, right?
So your parents are like, anyone who's overweight is not attractive.
I grew up like when I would come home, they would pinch my stomach or pinch my arms. So I think there was like, I did the zone diet.
I did that. I mean, I've done them all. So
Yeah.
Me too. I've done them all too.
In like the early 2000s. And I was like probably too young to understand how to do it in any sort of healthy way. So I came back like 100 pounds at Christmas and they were like, "You look fantastic." And you get so much positive feedback. And I had never worked out. I was so unhealthy. So what I did eat, I would just like eat a cube of cheese when I was hungry. And so, yeah, but I did grow up with messaging and my parents are still like that, right? I'm not going to change them, but they're still like that.
Yeah, and again, our parents, when I say like the media messaging, all this stuff, I mean, if we want to go really deep, I mean, all of this comes from puritanical Christianity that was like discipline is defined as control. If you're thin, you're showing that you work hard. And I mean, this is like really big stuff, but it's so much bigger than our parents, right? They're just trying to keep, like, they did the best with what they knew. They wanted us to be safe and welcomed,
Yeah.
So, I mean, it doesn't mean we don't look at like where this stuff came from, but like these are deep cultural values that get warped. And in the case of like discipline, it's like, I always tell my clients, part of our work is to like even what we call self-author our own values. Like, you can't control your body. There's some stuff you can control, right? Like your blood sugar, the zone diet. I learned about blood sugar there. And so you can control how satiated and satisfied you feel from food. But it's about devotion. I'm like, let's think of it rather than being disciplined with your body. Let's be devoted to figuring out how it works and how to feel good in it.
You just hit me so deeply with that.
Right?
Oh my gosh. Discipline to devotion.
Yeah. And rather than what looks good to everybody else, what feels good. Being hungry sucks. Yeah. Right? Like having cravings sucks. Like
Binging sucks.
What foods work?
Yeah.
Yeah, binging sucks. Yeah. Kind of fun fact, I used to do a TV segment in Philadelphia for NBC, and in 2009, I bought a Zone bar as kind of like showing what, this was back when people didn't know what processed foods were.
I ate that Zone bar every day for breakfast. Yeah.
When I moved when we sold our condo and left Philly in like, I think 2015, that Zone bar was still edible. I was like, this is gross.
No.
Like, I still had it in the wrapper and I opened it up and I was like, I did not try it, but I was like, I think someone could still eat this. So funny little fun fact about that. But didn't mean to switch the temperature.
No. There's so many, like, gosh, Ali, we could just talk to you for hours and hours. I already see this. And I want to just shift, and Sonia, if it's okay with you, just shift to
Thank you for listening and being with us
food
today.
and alcohol.
If you want to learn more about sobriety and meet your community, find us.
How do
Sisters
drugs,
in
alcohol,
Sobriety
or whatever
.substack.com.
your thing is, how does it
Are
affect
you a sister in
blood
sobriety?
sugar levels,
Then
and
reach out
how
on
does
social
this
media.
impact
We'd love
your
to hear from
cravings?
you.
If
Thank you
you're
for
feeling
listening
generous,
to Sisters
leave
in
us 5
Sobriety,
stars
and we'll
and a
see you
review.
next week
Follow
when
us
we'll
wherever
share
you
part
listen.
2 of
You'll
our
never miss an
conversation with
episode.
Ali. You don't want to
Until
miss
next
it.
time.